She left everything behind to build a future for the man she loved, working endless nights, sending every dollar, trusting every word. 3 years later, she returned home unannounced, only to find her best friend living her life, in the house she paid for, beside her husband. They didn't deny it, they laughed. But what they didn't know was that Sophia wasn't broken. She was just getting started. Hello fam, welcome to True Love Stories, where we share interesting and intriguing stories. Please do well to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do not forget to like and share with your loved ones. Now let's dive into the story. The first time Richard held Sophia's hand, it felt like stability, like something solid in a world that had always demanded more from her than it gave. Sophia had just finished nursing school, and it hadn't been easy. There were nights she studied until sunrise, days she skipped meals to save money, and moments she nearly gave up entirely. But she didn't. She couldn't. Becoming a nurse wasn't just a dream. It was her way out, her way forward, her way of building something better than the life she came from. And then came Richard. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't need to be. There was a calm confidence about him, the kind that made people lean in when he spoke. He listened, really listened, and when he looked at Sophia, it felt like he saw everything she had been through and admired her for it. "You're different," he told her one evening as they walked along a quiet street, the warm air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. "You don't just talk about dreams. You chase them." Sophia smiled, shy but proud. "I don't have a choice." "You do now," he said gently. "You've already proven you can build something. Imagine what we could build together." That word, "we," settled deep in her heart. Their relationship moved quickly, but it never felt rushed. It felt certain. Richard showed up in ways that mattered. He brought her food during late study nights, checked in before her exams, and spoke about her future like it was already unfolding beautifully. And Sophia, after years of struggling alone, allowed herself to lean on someone, to trust someone. Her best friend, Kendra, noticed the change immediately. "I've never seen you like this," Kendra teased one afternoon as they sat in a small cafe, sipping cold drinks and escaping the afternoon heat. "You're glowing." Sophia laughed, shaking her head. "Stop it. No, seriously. This one feels different." Sophia paused, her smile softening. "He is different." Kendra nodded slowly, watching her. "Just be careful, okay? Not everyone who sounds like a dream is one." Sophia waved her off lightly. "You worry too much." But even then, Kendra's words lingered, just faint enough to ignore. Months passed, and Richard became more than just a boyfriend. He became her partner in everything. They talked about marriage, about children, about the kind of life they wanted, a house with space, stability, peace. Then one night, under a dim streetlight that flickered occasionally, Richard brought it up again. But this time, it felt more serious. "You know your nursing degree can take you anywhere, right?" he said, leaning against his car, arms folded as he watched her. Sophia nodded. "I've thought about it. Maybe the US or the UK." Richard stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Then go." She blinked. "Go. For a few years," he continued. "Work, save money. Nurses are respected there. Paid well. You could build something big, Sophia. Bigger than what's possible here right now." She hesitated. "What about us?" He didn't even pause. "We'll be fine," he said firmly. "Better than fine. I'll stay here, start building. Invest. Maybe even begin construction on a house. By the time you come back," he smiled, "we won't be starting from scratch. We'll already have a life waiting." Sophia searched his face, looking for doubt, hesitation, anything that might suggest uncertainty. There was none. Only confidence. Only vision. "And you'd wait?" she asked quietly. Richard reached for her hands, squeezing them gently. "I'm not going anywhere." The warmth of his touch, the certainty in his voice, it erased every fear before it could fully form. Within months, they were married. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. Friends and family gathered, music filled the air, and laughter carried into the evening. Sophia wore a simple but elegant dress, her natural curls styled neatly, her face glowing with hope. Kendra stood beside her, adjusting her veil and smiling through misty eyes. "You're really doing this," Kendra whispered. Sophia nodded, her heart full. "I am." Kendra hugged her tightly. "Just don't forget me when you become an international nurse, okay?" Sophia laughed. "Never." Across the room, Richard watched them, smiling proudly, like a man who had already secured his future. The wedding passed in a blur of joy, promises, and celebration. And then, just like that, reality began to settle in. Sophia started preparing to leave. The process was exhausting: paperwork, exams, interviews, financial planning. She gathered money from her savings, accepted support from her parents, and stretched every resource she had to make the move possible. Through it all, Richard remained supportive. "I'm proud of you," he told her often. "Everything you're doing, it's for us." For us. Those words became her anchor. The night before her flight, they sat together in their small living room, surrounded by packed bags and quiet anticipation. Sophia rested her head on his shoulder. "It's going to be hard." "I know," he admitted. "But it's temporary." She looked up at him. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't change." Richard smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I won't. And when you come back," he paused, his eyes locking onto hers, "you won't recognize our life. It'll be everything we dreamed of." Sophia believed him. Completely. The next morning at the airport, emotions ran high. Her parents hugged her tightly, offering prayers and encouragement. Kendra held on to her the longest. "Call me all the time," Kendra said. "I mean it." "I will," Sophia promised. Finally, she turned to Richard. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he pulled her into his arms. "Go make us proud," he whispered. She closed her eyes, holding on to him like she could carry the feeling with her. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he replied without hesitation. And with that, Sophia walked away, toward a future she believed she was building with the man she trusted most. She didn't look back. If she had, she might have noticed something. Not doubt, not sadness, but something colder, something calculating. But by then it was already too late. America did not welcome Sophia gently. It greeted her with cold air that cut through her coat, unfamiliar accents that twisted her name into something unrecognizable, and a silence that felt heavier than anything she had ever known. Her first apartment was small, barely more than a room with thin walls and a flickering kitchen light. At night, the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic were her only companions. It was nothing like home. Nothing like the life she had imagined while sitting beside Richard, dreaming out loud. But she didn't come for comfort. She came to build. Her first job at the hospital was overwhelming. The pace was relentless, the expectations high. Patients came and went in waves, some kind, others indifferent, a few openly dismissive. Her co-workers were polite but distant, already wrapped in their own routines. Still, Sophia endured. She picked up extra shifts. Then more. Day shifts turned into night shifts. Nights blurred into mornings. Sleep became something she negotiated with, not something she fully experienced. Her hands grew rough, her feet constantly sore, her eyes tired, but her resolve never wavered. Because every hour worked meant progress. Every paycheck meant possibility. And every sacrifice meant she was getting closer to the life she and Richard had planned. At first, the distance between them felt manageable. They spoke every day, long calls filled with laughter, updates, and longing. "I miss you," Richard would say, his voice soft through the phone. "I miss you more," Sophia would reply, curling into her bed after another exhausting shift. He would tell her about his plans, how he was meeting contractors, scouting land, laying the foundation for their future. "I found the perfect location," he said once, excitement spilling through the call. "Quiet area. Good roads. It's going to be beautiful, Sophia." She smiled into the darkness. "I can't wait to see it." "You will," he promised. "Just keep doing what you're doing. You're making this possible." And she believed him. Entirely. The first request came casually. "Baby, I need a little help," Richard said one evening. "The land payment is due sooner than expected." Sophia didn't hesitate. "How much?" When he told her, her heart skipped, but only for a second. "I'll send it," she said. And she did. It felt good, in a way. Like she was contributing. Like she wasn't just far away working. She was actively building something with him. But the requests didn't stop. A few weeks later, it was money for clearing the land. Then cement. Then labor. Then permits. Then unexpected costs. Each time, Richard sounded apologetic, but never enough to stop asking. "I hate to keep bothering you like this," he'd say. "It's okay," Sophia would reassure him quickly. "That's what we're doing this for, right?" "For us," he would reply. That phrase became their rhythm. For us. For us. For us. Sophia began budgeting her life around those words. She stopped buying things for herself. No new clothes. No outings. No small comforts. Every extra dollar had a purpose, and that purpose lived thousands of miles away. Sometimes, after sending money, she would sit quietly and imagine the house. The kitchen she would cook in. The bedroom she would finally rest in. The life waiting for her when all this sacrifice was over. And those thoughts were enough to keep her going. Kendra became a steady presence in those years, too. At first, it was comforting. They would video call, laughing like nothing had changed. "Look at you," Kendra teased once, eyeing Sophia's tired face through the screen. "You're working too hard." Sophia shrugged with a small smile. "It's temporary." "It better be," Kendra said. "You deserve to enjoy life too." Sometimes, Kendra would be at the house with Richard during calls. Sophia didn't think twice about it. In fact, it reassured her. It made the distance feel smaller, knowing her best friend was there, close to her husband, close to her future. "Girl, the house is coming along," Kendra said during one call, flipping the camera briefly to show a half-finished wall. "You're going to love it." Sophia's face lit up. "Really? Really?" Kendra said with a grin. "Richard is working hard." Sophia's chest swelled with pride. "My husband," she said softly. But as time passed, subtle changes began to creep in, so subtle that they were easy to ignore. Richard's calls became shorter. Sometimes he sounded distracted. Other times, he didn't call at all. When she asked, there was always a reason. "Work has been stressful. Network issues. I've been at the site all day." Sophia accepted every explanation. Because doubting him felt wrong. Because trusting him felt easier. Because everything she was doing depended on believing that he was still the man she married. The money requests, however, became more frequent and larger. "Furniture isn't cheap. We need a generator. It's important. I want the house to be perfect before you come back." Sophia began stretching herself thin. She picked up back-to-back shifts, sometimes working 16 hours straight. There were nights she cried quietly in the hospital bathroom, exhaustion pressing down on her chest. But she would wipe her tears, look at her reflection, and remind herself, this is for something bigger. Her coworkers noticed the change. "You need to slow down," one of them told her. "You're going to burn out." Sophia just smiled. "I'm okay." But she wasn't. She was running on faith. Faith in a man she couldn't see. Faith in a home she had never stepped into. Faith in a future she had only imagined. 3 years passed like that, quietly, painfully, relentlessly. Her life became a cycle of work, send, repeat. And through it all, she never stopped believing. Not when her body ached. Not when the loneliness crept in. Not when the calls grew shorter. Not even when something deep inside her, something small but persistent, whispered that something wasn't right. She silenced that voice every time. Because love to her meant trust. And trust meant never questioning the person you were building your life with. So she kept going. Working. Sending. Believing. Unaware that with every dollar, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, she wasn't building a future. She was funding a betrayal. The decision came to Sophia quietly. Not as a plan, but as a feeling. It had been one of those rare mornings where she wasn't rushing to a shift. The sunlight slipped through her curtains, soft and unfamiliar, like it didn't quite belong in her life of constant motion. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, scrolling through old photos. Pictures of her and Richard. Their wedding day. Kendra standing beside her, both of them laughing. A screenshot of a video call where Richard had shown her the early stages of the house. Just a foundation then, nothing more than lines drawn into dirt. Sophia stared at it longer than she meant to. 3 years. 3 years of building, sending, believing. And suddenly a thought surfaced, clear and undeniable. What if I just go home? Not planned. Not announced. Just go. The idea made her heart race. She imagined his reaction, the shock on his face, the way his eyes would light up, the way he would pull her into his arms like no time had passed at all. She smiled to herself. It felt right. That same day, she requested time off. It wasn't easy. Her supervisor raised an eyebrow at the sudden notice, but Sophia didn't care. For once, she was choosing something for herself. Or at least, that's what she believed. The next few days were a blur of preparation. She packed carefully, folding clothes with a kind of nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. She bought gifts, small but thoughtful things. A watch for Richard. Perfume for Kendra. Souvenirs that said I was thinking of you, even from far away. At the airport, everything felt surreal. The same place she had once stood, scared and hopeful, was now where she stood again. Only this time, she was returning stronger, accomplished, ready to step into the life she had worked so hard to create. As the plane lifted into the sky, Sophia leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. She imagined everything. The house. The reunion. The beginning of the rest of her life. Hours later, when the plane finally landed, her heart wouldn't slow down. Every step felt heavier with anticipation. Through immigration. Through baggage claim. Through the sliding glass doors that led her back into the heat she once called home. Nigeria wrapped around her like memory, familiar, alive, overwhelming. She inhaled deeply. I'm home. She didn't call Richard. Not yet. That was part of the surprise. Instead, she got into a taxi, giving the driver the address Richard had proudly shared with her months ago. The new estate? The driver asked. Sophia smiled. Yes. Ah, he nodded. Fine place. Big houses there. Her chest swelled with pride. Our house, she thought. The drive felt endless. Every turn, every street pulled her deeper into a mix of excitement and something else. Something she couldn't quite name. Maybe nerves. Maybe intuition. But she ignored it. When the taxi finally slowed, the driver gestured ahead. Here. Sophia's breath caught. There it was. The house. It was beautiful. Even more than she imagined. Tall, freshly painted, with clean lines and a balcony that overlooked the street. The gate stood strong and polished, the compound neat and spacious. For a moment, she just sat there, staring. We did this. A smile spread slowly across her face, her eyes glistening. Every sleepless night. Every dollar sent. Every sacrifice. It had turned into something real. Something she could finally touch. She paid the driver, her hands slightly trembling, and stepped out of the car. The air felt warmer now. Closer. Her suitcase wheels rattled softly against the ground as she walked toward the gate. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. This was it. The moment she had waited for. She reached into her bag and pulled out the key Richard had sent her months ago. I want you to be able to walk into your home anytime, he had said. Her home. Sophia smiled at the memory. Her fingers tightened around the key as she approached the door. Then, she paused. There it was again. That feeling. Faint. Unsettling. Like something was slightly off. She frowned, glancing around. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. She shook her head lightly. You're just nervous. Taking a deep breath, she inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened without resistance. And just as she stepped inside, she heard it. Laughter. Not just any laughter. A woman's laughter. Soft. Comfortable. Familiar. Sophia froze. Her grip tightened on the suitcase handle as the sound echoed faintly from deeper inside the house. For a second, her mind tried to explain it away. Maybe a visitor. Maybe family. Maybe. Then another sound followed. A man's voice. Richard's voice. Casual. Relaxed. At ease. Like this was just another ordinary day. Sophia's heartbeat shifted. No longer excitement, but something sharper. Slower. Heavier. Each step she took forward felt wrong now, like she was walking into something she wasn't meant to see. The living room came into view gradually. First the furniture, expensive, carefully chosen. Then a pair of shoes by the couch. Not hers. Not unfamiliar either. Her breath caught. And then, she saw her. Kendra, curled comfortably on the couch, dressed in silk, completely at home. Sophia's world tilted. Her vision narrowed, her thoughts scrambling to catch up with what her eyes were showing her. No, this didn't make sense. Before she could speak, before she could even fully process it. Movement. Richard stepped into view from the hallway. Shirtless. Relaxed. Unbothered. And when his eyes met hers, there was no shock. No panic. No guilt. Just a brief pause. As if she were an interruption. Not a wife returning home. But something inconvenient. Something unexpected. Something unnecessary. Sophia's fingers slowly loosened from her suitcase. It tipped slightly, falling against the floor with a dull sound that echoed louder than it should have. No one rushed to her. No one explained. No one apologized. And in that moment, before a single word was spoken, Sophia understood. The surprise wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to them. For a moment, time didn't move. It stretched, thin, fragile, like it might snap under the weight of what Sophia was seeing. Kendra. On the couch. In that house. In her house. And Richard. Standing there like nothing was wrong. Like this wasn't betrayal. Like this wasn't destruction. Like this was normal. Sophia's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her mind scrambled, searching for something, anything, that could make this make sense. Kendra? She finally whispered, her voice barely holding together. Kendra didn't rush to explain. She didn't jump up in guilt. She didn't even look ashamed. Instead, she sighed softly, like someone whose peace had just been interrupted. You didn't say you were coming, Kendra said, her tone calm, almost annoyed. The words landed slowly. Too slowly. Sophia blinked, confusion twisting into something sharper. I wanted to surprise. Yeah, Kendra cut in, sitting up straighter. Well, surprise. Sophia turned to Richard, her eyes searching his face desperately. Richard. His name trembled in her mouth. What is this? He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling like he was dealing with a minor inconvenience. Sophia, listen. No, she said quickly, her voice cracking but rising. You listen. What is going on? Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. But not for them. Only for her. Kendra stood up slowly, adjusting her silk robe like she belonged there. Like she had always belonged there. You've been gone a long time, Sophia, she said, crossing her arms. Sophia stared at her, disbelief flooding every inch of her body. So that's your explanation? She asked, her voice shaking. That I left to build a future, and you just stepped into my life? Kendra shrugged slightly. Life doesn't pause because you travel. The cruelty in her tone was quiet, but precise. It cut deeper than shouting ever could. Sophia's chest tightened as she turned back to Richard. Tell me she's lying, she said, her voice softer now, but more dangerous. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Richard didn't meet her eyes immediately. And in that hesitation, everything shattered. We didn't plan it, he said finally. Sophia felt the words hit her like a physical force. We, she repeated faintly. It just happened, he continued. You were gone. Things changed. Things changed? She echoed, a broken laugh escaping her. 3 years of my life, Richard. 3 years of sending you everything I had. And things changed? He frowned slightly, like her reaction was excessive. You're making it sound worse than it is. That was when something inside her cracked open completely. Worse than it is, she repeated, her voice rising. You're sleeping with my best friend in the house I paid for. Kendra let out a short laugh. Correction, she said, tilting her head slightly. The house he owns. Sophia froze. What did you just say? Kendra walked a few steps closer, her expression almost amused now. "This house? It's in Richard's name," she said. "You really thought he was putting it in yours?" Sophia's heartbeat slowed, dangerously slow. Her ears rang. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not. Richard, tell her." "It's true," he said flatly. Just like that. No hesitation. No softness. No care. The final thread snapped. Sophia staggered back slightly, her hand instinctively reaching for the wall to steady herself. "All the money," she whispered. "Every transfer, every sacrifice." Richard shrugged lightly. It helped, obviously. Helped. The word echoed in her mind like a mockery. "You told me this was our house," she said, her voice trembling violently now. "You told me we were building a future together." "And we are," he replied, almost defensively. Sophia stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "With her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kendra didn't even flinch. "If you want to put it that way," she said coolly. Sophia looked between them. Two people she had loved, trusted, defended. Two people who now stood in front of her like strangers. No, not strangers. Strangers wouldn't have known how to hurt her this precisely. "You knew," Sophia said suddenly, her gaze locking onto Kendra. "All those calls, all those times you smiled at me, you knew." Kendra didn't deny it. Instead, she gave a small, unapologetic shrug. "You were far away," she said. "What did you expect me to do? Sit around and wait with him?" The casual cruelty of it sucked the air out of the room. Sophia's throat tightened painfully. "I trusted you," she said, her voice breaking now. "You were my sister." Kendra's expression hardened slightly. "Well, you trusted the wrong person. That did it." The tears came, but not loudly. Not dramatically. They slipped down Sophia's face silently, steadily, as everything she had built inside herself collapsed. 3 years. Every moment replayed in her mind. Every call, every word, every sacrifice now twisted into something ugly. She looked at Richard one last time. "Did you ever love me?" she asked. For the first time, he hesitated. But it wasn't long enough. "It's not about that," he said. And somehow, that answer hurt more than anything else. Sophia nodded slowly, as if something inside her had finally accepted what her heart had been resisting. "Okay," she said quietly. She bent down, picking up her suitcase with trembling hands. Neither of them moved to stop her. Neither of them apologized. As she walked toward the door, Kendra's voice followed her. "You'll be fine," she said casually. "You're strong, right? You've been surviving all this time." Sophia paused for just a fraction of a second. Not to respond. Not to argue. Just to breathe. Then she opened the door and stepped out. The evening air hit her face, but she barely felt it. Behind her, the door closed. Softly, like the end of something that had once meant everything. And as Sophia walked away from the house she thought was hers, one truth settled deeply into her bones. She hadn't just lost a marriage. She hadn't just lost a best friend. She had lost 3 years of her life to a lie. And the people who took it from her didn't regret it at all. Sophia didn't remember how she got into the taxi. One moment she was walking away from the house, her suitcase dragging behind her like dead weight. And the next, she was seated in the back of a car, staring blankly out the window as the world blurred past. "Madam, where to?" the driver asked. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For a few seconds, she just sat there, her thoughts scattered, her chest tight, her hands trembling in her lap. "Anywhere," she finally whispered. The driver hesitated, then nodded gently and pulled away from the curb. The city moved around her, busy, loud, alive, but Sophia felt completely detached from it. The sounds were distant, like she was underwater, watching everything happen without being part of it. Her reflection stared back at her in the window. She barely recognized herself. The same face, the same eyes, but something inside them had changed. Something had gone quiet. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She hadn't even realized she was holding it. A message. From Richard. "Let's not make this more dramatic than it needs to be." Sophia stared at the screen. Then another message came. "We can talk later when you calm down." A third, don't do anything stupid. For a moment, her expression didn't change. Then slowly, very slowly, she turned the phone off. Not in anger, not in panic, but with a kind of finality. Whatever existed between them no longer deserved her attention. Madam, the driver's voice broke through gently. Where should I take you? Sophia swallowed, her throat dry. A hotel, she said quietly. Anywhere decent. He nodded. I know a place. The ride continued in silence. This time, she didn't look outside. She looked inward. And that's when it hit her. Not all at once, but in waves. The calls. The money. The lies. The way Richard's voice had changed over time. The way Kendra had always been around. The subtle signs she had ignored. The questions she had chosen not to ask. Sophia pressed her lips together as tears filled her eyes again. But this time, they weren't just tears of pain. They carried something else. Understanding. And with understanding came something sharper than heartbreak. Truth. They planned it, she whispered to herself. Not an accident. Not something that just happened. This had been built. Carefully. Gradually. While she worked. While she trusted. While she loved. Her chest tightened, but she didn't break the way she had earlier. Because something was shifting. Pain was still there, deep, raw, undeniable. But beneath it, something stronger was beginning to form. By the time the taxi stopped, the tears had slowed. The driver stepped out to help with her luggage, glancing at her with quiet concern. Are you okay? He asked softly. Sophia paused before answering. Then she nodded. I will be. It wasn't true yet. But it would be. Inside the hotel room, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was honest. No lies. No pretending. Just her. Sophia placed her suitcase near the bed and sat down slowly, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion she had been carrying for years. Not just physical exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. The kind that comes from giving everything you have to the wrong people. She looked down at her hands. These same hands had worked endless shifts. Held patients in pain. Signed transfer after transfer. Built something she never got to have. Her breathing grew uneven again, and this time she didn't fight it. The tears came, stronger, heavier. She bent forward, covering her face as the sobs finally broke free. Not quiet. Not controlled. Real. Everything she had held in for 3 years poured out at once. The loneliness. The hope. The betrayal. The humiliation. It tore through her, leaving nothing untouched. Why? She choked out, though there was no one there to answer. No explanation could fix this. No apology could undo it. And deep down, she knew they weren't sorry anyway. That realization changed everything. Slowly, the crying faded. Not because the pain was gone, but because it had settled. Transformed. Sophia sat up, wiping her face with shaking hands. Her eyes were red. Her chest still tight. But her gaze was different now. Clearer. Colder. They think I'm finished, she said quietly. She let out a slow breath, her fingers curling slightly against her knees. They think they took everything. Her mind began to move, not in chaos, but in focus. Every transfer she had made. Every message. Every piece of evidence. She had trusted blindly before. But now? Now she would see everything. For what it truly was. This isn't the end, she murmured. It wasn't anger that filled her. Not yet. It was something more dangerous. Control. For the first time since she walked into that house, Sophia wasn't reacting. She was thinking. Planning. Becoming. She stood up slowly and walked toward the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her again. Same face. Same woman. But no longer the same person. The softness in her eyes had hardened into something sharper. Not bitterness. Not cruelty. But awareness. Strength born from betrayal. You took 3 years from me, she said softly to her reflection. A pause. Then, I'll take it back. Not through shouting. Not through chaos. But through something far more precise. Far more final. Sophia turned away from the mirror, her movements calm now, deliberate. The pain hadn't disappeared. It was still there. It would be for a long time. But it was no longer in control. And as she sat back down on the bed, reaching for her phone again, this time not to call, not to cry, but to begin, one truth settled firmly in her chest. They had broken her heart. But they had also made a mistake. They thought she was just the woman who loved them. They forgot. She was also the woman who built everything they had. And now, she was the woman who could take it all away. Revenge did not come to Sophia as fire. It came as silence, cold, controlled, and patient. By the time she returned to the United States, there was nothing impulsive left in her. No late-night messages. No emotional outbursts. No desperate need for answers. That version of her had stayed behind. In that house, at that door, with the woman who used to be her best friend and the man who used to be her husband. What came back was different. Sharper. Focused. Her apartment looked the same as she had left it. Small, quiet, functional. But now, it felt like a command center instead of a place of survival. Sophia dropped her suitcase by the door and stood still for a moment. Then she got to work. The first thing she did was gather everything. Not memories. Evidence. She opened her laptop and logged into her bank accounts, her email, her messaging apps. One by one, she pulled records. Every transfer she had ever sent Richard. Dates. Amounts. Descriptions. Patterns. There were dozens. No, hundreds. Her jaw tightened as the numbers added up into something almost unbelievable. Years of sacrifice reduced to figures on a screen. But this time, those numbers weren't a source of pain. They were leverage. She created folders. Organized everything. Screenshots of conversations where Richard had asked for money. Always framed as "for us." Voice notes where he described the house as their future. Even messages where Kendra had encouraged her. "Girl, send it. You're almost done building your dream." Sophia paused at that one. Her eyes hardened. Then she saved it too. Nothing would be overlooked. Nothing would be forgotten. Days turned into a routine. Work shifts. Then research. Then documentation. She began learning. Quietly, thoroughly. Financial fraud. Marital property laws. International transfers. Deception under marriage. Every piece of information became a tool. She reached out to a lawyer first through email, then scheduled a consultation. Then another. And another. She didn't settle for the first opinion. She listened. Compared. Analyzed. By the third consultation, her case had a shape. By the fifth, it had strength. "This is more than betrayal," one lawyer told her, reviewing the documents. "This is financial exploitation under false pretenses." Sophia sat still, absorbing every word. "Can I get it back?" she asked. The lawyer leaned back slightly. "Not easily," he said. "But yes, it's possible." That was all she needed to hear. Back in Nigeria, life continued for them. At least for a while. Richard and Kendra settled deeper into the life Sophia had funded. The house was fully furnished now, luxury couches, expensive appliances, curated decor. They hosted gatherings. Laughed loudly. Posted pictures. Kendra in designer outfits. Richard posing like a man who had built everything himself. To anyone watching, they looked successful. Untouchable. But what they didn't see was the clock Sophia had started. The first sign came quietly. A bank notification Richard didn't expect. Transaction declined. He tried again. Declined. Then another account. Frozen. At first, he thought it was an error. Until the emails arrived. Formal. Legal. Precise. Kendra noticed the shift immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked one evening, watching him scroll through his phone with a growing frown. Richard didn't answer right away. Then he handed her the screen. She read. Once. Twice. Her expression changed. "What is this?" she demanded. "Legal notice," he said slowly. "From who?" He didn't need to answer. They both already knew. Thousands of miles away, Sophia sat at her small kitchen table, her laptop open, her phone beside her. It rang. She looked at the screen. Richard. She let it ring. It stopped. Then started again. She silenced it. A message came through seconds later. Sophia, what is this nonsense? Another. Why are my accounts frozen? Another. Pick up your phone. She read every word. Then placed the phone face down on the table. Calm. Unmoved. This was not about reacting anymore. This was about execution. Her legal team moved forward steadily. Petitions filed. Claims submitted. Documentation reviewed. Every step backed by evidence she had carefully preserved. Every claim tied to proof. Fraud. Misrepresentation. Financial abuse within a marriage. The case expanded beyond what Richard had expected, and beyond what Kendra could dismiss. Back in Nigeria, the tension grew. What if we lose everything? Kendra asked one night, pacing the living room. Richard scoffed, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. She can't do anything, he said. It's all in my name. But even as he said it, he wasn't as sure anymore. Because ownership on paper didn't erase the truth of how it was built. And now, that truth had a voice. Sophia. She received updates regularly. Each one calm. Structured. Progress. Assets under review. Accounts restricted. Next hearing scheduled. She didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because this wasn't about revenge in the way they would understand it. She didn't want chaos. She wanted correction. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted what was hers. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings outside her apartment, her lawyer called again. They've been officially served, he said. Sophia closed her eyes briefly. A slow breath left her chest. Okay, she replied. No excitement. No laughter. Just quiet confirmation. The process had begun. For real. After the call ended, she stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched out before her, busy, indifferent, alive. She rested her hand lightly against the glass. They thought I wouldn't do anything, she said softly. And maybe once upon a time, they would have been right. But not anymore. Sophia wasn't the woman who left home with hope in her eyes and love in her heart. That woman believed in promises. This one believed in proof. This one understood value. Understood consequence. Understood power. They took 3 years from me, she said. Her reflection stared back faintly in the glass, steady, unshaken. But they're going to pay for every single one. Not through anger. Not through noise. But through something far more devastating. Truth backed by action. And as Sophia turned away from the window, returning to her table, her files, her strategy, one thing was certain. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of their reckoning. Sophia didn't just threaten consequences. She executed them. Precisely. Patiently. Completely. By the time Richard and Kendra realized how serious things were, it was already too late to fix anything. It started with the courts. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just effective. Sophia's legal team moved fast, leveraging everything she had documented. Every wire transfer, every message where Richard explicitly tied her money to the construction of the house, every instance of deception under marriage. The case didn't sit in one country. It stretched across borders. U.S. financial records. Nigerian property law. Marriage fraud statutes. What Richard thought was safe because it was in his name became the very thing that exposed him. Because ownership couldn't erase origin. And the origin of that house was Sophia. The ruling came in stages. First, financial freezing orders became permanent seizures. Every account linked to the transfers was locked down and audited. Money Richard had moved around? Traced. Money he had spent? Documented. Money he thought was gone? Counted against him. Then came the shock he didn't expect. A restitution judgment. He wasn't just losing access. He owed. A lot. This doesn't make sense, Richard shouted, pacing the living room as he read the court notice for the 5th time. Kendra stood nearby, her face pale. What do you mean we owe? How can we owe money we already spent? Richard didn't answer. Because deep down, he understood. They hadn't just taken from Sophia. They had misused funds obtained through deception. And now the law was correcting it. Then came the second blow. The house. Sophia's legal team had anticipated everything. They filed a claim not just for financial recovery, but for constructive ownership. Meaning, even if the house was in Richard's name, it was built with Sophia's money under false pretenses. And that made it contestable. The court order arrived early in the morning. Official. Stamped. Final. Property seizure and reassignment pending liquidation. Kendra read it twice, her hands shaking. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Richard didn't respond immediately. Because for the first time, he didn't have control of the narrative. "They're taking the house," he said finally. Silence fell like a collapse. The eviction notice came 3 days later. 3 days. That was all they had left of the life they had been living. "You can't be serious," Kendra snapped at the officer standing at the door. "This is a mistake." The officer didn't react. "Ma'am, you've been served multiple notices," he said calmly. "This is enforcement." Richard stepped forward, anger rising. "Do you know who I am?" The officer met his gaze without flinching. "Yes," he said. "You're the respondent." That word hit harder than any insult. They scrambled, called people, looked for help. But the story had already spread, quietly, professionally, legally. No one wanted to attach themselves to a case involving fraud and financial exploitation. Doors closed. Quickly. On the final day, movers arrived, not for them, but around them. Inventory was taken. Assets were logged. High-value items tagged for liquidation. Everything that could be sold would be to repay what they owed. Kendra stood in the middle of the living room, watching strangers catalog the life she thought was hers. "This is insane," she whispered. But even she no longer sounded convinced. Richard tried one last time. He called Sophia. For the first time, she answered. There was a pause. Then his voice came through, strained. "Sophia, please. This has gone too far." She didn't respond immediately. "I'll fix it," he continued quickly. "We can settle this. Just stop this process." Sophia's voice, when it came, was calm. "You had 3 years to be honest," she said. "That was your chance." He swallowed. "You're destroying everything." A slight pause. Then, "No," she replied. "I'm reclaiming it." And just like that, the call ended. By evening, it was over. Richard and Kendra stood outside the gate with a few bags. Not suitcases. Not wealth. Just what they could carry. Behind them, the house was no longer theirs. Legally. Financially. Completely. Within weeks, the property was sold under court supervision. The proceeds didn't go to them. They went toward repayment. But it wasn't enough. Not even close. Because lifestyle spending doesn't hold value. And debt lingers. They were left with nothing. No house. No savings. No safety net. Only obligations. Legal fees. Outstanding balances. A record that would follow them. And Sophia? She didn't return to the house. She didn't need to. By the time everything was finalized, she stood exactly where she had planned to be. In control. Restored. Whole. One evening, sitting in her apartment, she reviewed the final report. Recovered funds. Closed claims. Resolved case. She read the last line twice. Then closed the file. No smile. No celebration. Just a quiet, steady breath. They had taken from her thinking she would never fight back. They thought distance made her weak. They thought trust made her easy. They thought wrong. Because in the end, they didn't just lose what they built with her money. They lost everything they tried to become without her. And Sophia? She didn't just get her life back. She made sure they felt exactly what it meant to lose one. Finally, we have come to the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, do well to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.